KDKR Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC Commerce, and KMWC Bethany. On the web at kdkr.org and on all your devices with the Live 365 app. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, what should you do to get summer ready for your car? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Today we're doing the special Car Corner edition, and in studio with me is the one, the only, Tony Joe. So if you want to talk to Tony Joe, 1-877-913-5357. If you got a question for me, if you want to go to prudentmoney.com and send a question. We'll get you taken care of. Tony Joe, you want me to turn your... I just do it subconsciously. I don't turn your mic up. There we go.
It's not subconscious. It's on purpose.
It's a conspiracy, isn't it?
Why do you have to keep introducing me as some kind of a celebrity?
Well, I'm humbled to be in your presence.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just a fella like everybody else, you know?
Well, no, you're the one, the only. There's no one quite like you.
People expect more when you introduce me like that.
Okay, so what do you think about 25% tariffs on cars coming into the U.S.? I did a little check on this.
Okay.
And you can tell me if this sounds accurate or not. I think it's a little bit less than what the real number is. Out of all the cars in the U.S. that come into the U.S. to be sold, 25% is the number of cars that would be subject to a tariff.
Okay.
Now, of course, you also, what they don't figure in, I'm sure all of these car parts, all of these they're coming in from China, definitely got a tariff on them as well. Probably not 25%. But it makes you wonder how much our car price is going to go up, or will they?
Well,
I'd probably have to.
I'm of the belief that temporarily they may go up, but I'm also quite an advocate over just simply what I've observed time and time again already since Mr. Trump has been in office. He likes to use the tariff card and wave it in front of your face and as a negotiating tool. Now, I know the tariffs are gone into effect, but I'm going to say to you my opinion only. It's just my opinion. They're going to drop the tariffs because the foreign shippers are going to drop their tariffs. It's not going to stay like this because if you think about what is the advantage to either side to have offsetting tariffs, that just makes everything go up. I just don't believe the trade is going to continue with the tariffs. I think putting tariffs on foreign incoming vehicles is not going to last. It's going to be offsetting tariffs, and I think you will see that he's just trying to even things out, and that is when the tariffs come off on their side, the tariffs will come off on our side. And then the prices are going to be lower for everybody involved. It doesn't make sense for both parties to lose when both parties can win. Now, that's just my opinion. I know you know more about it than I do. I'm just telling you what I see.
I don't think I know. I don't
Bob.
think any of us know what's really going on. But I do think that you need to consider that he steps up to the plate, not to hit singles, not to hit doubles, not to hit triples, to hit the ball out of the ballpark. That's been his MO. That's what he does. Mm-hmm. And I believe he's taken it so far that he's crossed that line. Not that there's part of me that wants to agree with you, because that is what he does, that as well, exactly what you're talking about. But I think that what you're seeing in the markets are saying, hey, we're really concerned this time. I think he's going to go through with it, and doing so knowing what's going to happen, because he's got a bigger vision, whatever that vision is.
Right. And all I can say at this point is we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
for sure, but I've seen this happen before. The tariffs are imposed and the tariffs are dropped. So I'm just kind of curious to see. Now it's getting into a venue that I'm a part of, the automobile industry. So now I'm kind of really watching.
Yeah, I guess it's what's interesting. Would you agree that the tariffs are going on more of your high-end cars from Europe?
Well,
definitely your
the
high-end.
Beamers, the Mercedes.
Yeah.
Now, my understanding, and somebody can correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but the way I understand it as of right now, there are no tariffs on parts. The tariffs are on the vehicles themselves.
Boy, a lot of parts come in from China, right?
China, Canada, global parts now. You can get an actual OEM General Motors AC Delco part right off the counter from the dealership. Bring it to your shop, open the box, and the bag that the part is in says made in Indonesia or made in Taiwan or made in Mexico. I mean, there's a lot to the parts business now. It's a global affair.
Well, if anything at all, it's going to give car dealerships a quote-unquote reason to raise prices,
right?
And MSRPs and that kind of thing.
I know, and none of us really know, but my opinion only is that watch the next 30 days. Those tariffs get dropped. I'm just throwing that out there because that's kind of what I think, but who knows? Could I be wrong? Never. But it's possible. I was wrong once in 88.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I'm not even going to ask what you're wrong about.
No, don't ask. But, I was wrong once before in my life.
Okay, well, that is a good segue to the end of that. So let's talk. I had to bring that up, and I didn't even tell you that you and I were going to talk about that.
That's interesting.
But let's talk about this time of the year, because there's obviously service dates and miles that you go and you take your car in for a 30,000 mile service, 45,000, whatever it might be. But there's certain things that you should probably be doing in between the service, your service dates. And this is such a great time of the year to say, every March or April, I'm going to get these 4 things done to my car, because summer's coming, and it's just good for your car to get these maintenance items out of the way.
Well, or at least have them checked. If you can't check them yourself, then get somebody that knows what they're doing to check them. But you may not need much. It's a good idea to have these things checked so you're on the ready 5 when the heat. Bob, I don't know if you noticed, but lately, the past few years, it seems like we've been nice and mild right up until one day, and then it's all 108 degrees. It's like, wow.
Right. I can tell you're looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, not me. But it is a good idea, like you said, to prepare, because when the heat does come, you won't have to, it's more miserable when you got to do everything in the heat. So, get it done now.
Let's talk about, they always start with step 1, and that is to service the air conditioning, the air conditioning system in your car. And they tell you to test it, but nobody tells you what tested means. Nobody tells you what to look out for, and just a couple of simple steps.
You're exactly right.
What we need.
Check your air conditioning. Well, how are you supposed to do that? I mean, really, what is a person that's
What's it mean?
Not knowledgeable about a car, other than turning it on and seeing if it blows cold? I guess that's what they mean. But here's a couple of tips that I can tell everybody to kind of get this checked if you can, because it's very easy and it's simple, and there's a good explanation about why you want to do this. Now, we all know, we've heard the term Freon. Freon, that goes in the air conditioner. It's a gas. It does have liquid form at certain temperatures, but it's a gas. It is not antifreeze that you put in the radiator, which is a liquid out of a bottle. So you have to test this gas with gauges, because it's very important that you know that the air conditioner is full. It can be topped off if it's not full. So it can be cold on a day like today, and then when it gets to be 100 degrees, it's not going to be as cold as it is right now. It may not even be cold at all. So it can trick you. You need to have the air conditioning system checked with a set of gauges, either your neighbor, your friends, or a professional. Somebody's got to check it. Why is it important that it's full? Because if the Freon level is low, it is not carrying the oil to the compressor. The compressor is like a little engine. It needs lubrication. It needs oil, just like the real engine in the car needs oil. What would happen if there was no oil? It would seize up and stop working. You don't want to cause a problem with your compressor. You can literally drive around low on refrigerant and not care that it's not that cold, but you should care that it's not carrying the oil to the compressor, which is going to cost you a tremendous amount of money when the compressor seizes up. So that's one thing. The other thing is, a lot of cars now, most cars now, have a pollen filter inside the vehicle, or a cabin filter, you might call it. And that filter, essentially, think of it as the same filter you have in your house that you have to change every month or every so many weeks, whatever your position is on that. If the filter collects more and more debris, which is what it's there for, it's going to slow down or restrict the amount of air coming at your face, chest level, floor, defrost, wherever you happen to have the settings on the mode for your air conditioner. So think about this. You got a filter in there. It's designed to trap pollen and dirt and dust and all this dog hair, whatever. As it gets more and more restricted, the amount of volume of air coming at you to keep you comfortable is going to get lower and lower and lower. Your hand, let's say, would have to be almost at the vent to feel any cold air coming out. So that needs to be checked. It produces more volume, which makes you more comfortable, and it is easier on the blower motor because the blower motor tends to draw more current when it has to work harder to throw air through a filter that's all plugged up. So having the Freon checked, not just because we want to check it, but because we're carrying oil through to the compressor, and having the cabin filter checked. Those are two really important things you need to do. Then the rest of it is cosmetic. You can do it yourself. Make sure all 5, 4, 3 speeds, whatever your blower motor has on it, make sure all the speeds work. Make sure the controls work properly. Make sure defrost goes to defrost and floor goes to floor. These are all modes that are important to check all the little actuators in the car to make sure everything is working to prepare you for the summer when it's going to get hot and you're going to need all those creature comforts.
Before we go forward here, Chris had a great idea. He sent me a text. And
Chris does have cool ideas.
He said to introduce you like a WWE wrestler. And so we could play your walk-up music. I'm scared to ask what that would be. If you even know what walk-up music is.
No, I don't. But I... oh, gosh. I wish I could think of the movie that I'm thinking of.
Remember, this is good, clean Christian radio.
Yeah,
so.
No, it's good, clean movie, too. It's... I can't think of it right now, but by next week... Look, tell Chris by next week I'll send it to him, and he can play it when we introduce, and I'll walk in the room, even though nobody can see it. I'll walk in like this.
Yeah, I'm sure people will look forward to that. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about cooling systems, and what they tell you is just top it off. Well, what does that mean? And surely there's more to it that you want to check out. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too, Tony Joe, is that that really might not be in the right order when you're talking about addressing your air conditioning
good
versus
thought, Bob, because
coolant system.
Yeah, that's a good thinking, because really, if you want to know the truth, it's more important to start with the cooling system rather than the air conditioning system, because what'll happen is the weather gets warmer, so the cooling system is going to work harder because you're adding heat. The underhood temperature is going to come up, the outside air is going to be hotter. Going through the radiator, the fan is going to draw warmer air. So the cooling system integrity needs to be in its best shape ever to take on all this heat. Then on top of that, you're going to turn on the air conditioner because it's hot outside. Now that air conditioning system adds even more heat under the hood. So you're right. The cooling system should be the first step because the air conditioner is going to introduce all this heat. We need that cooling system to be able to handle all this heat. So topping off the coolant, how is that really doing anything for the coolant? What you need to do to check the cooling system to make sure it's ready to accept all this added heat that's coming during the summer months. You start with the hoses. You check the hoses. You can check them a couple of different ways. You can check them visually and see if they are any weather cracks in them or any bulges, depicting a weak spot in the hose. Excuse me. You can look for leaks around the clamps or the hoses itself. You need to inspect very carefully the fan operation. If you don't know how it works, then it's easy to look up online, but if you sit there and let the car idle, turn on the air conditioner, in most cases the fan should come on. Turn the air conditioning off, the fan should come off. But if you start the car and let it run without the air conditioner, the fan should come on automatically when it reaches around 216 or 214, or depending on the make and model of the car, somewhere around there. So you want to make sure the fan comes on automatically to make sure it's working so it can draw air through the radiator and keep the car cool. The other thing you need to know about the cooling system is the water pump in many cases is still driven by the belt, so you need to check the belt. Usually, most cars today have maybe 2 belts, sometimes 3, but a lot of them just have 1. That one belt is far more important than you think, because in the days of old, you could lose a belt, like for the air conditioning compressor, it could break, and you could still drive the car to get to where you're going, or as long as you wanted to, until you got tired of not having air conditioner. You could lose, say, the power steering belt, and it wouldn't be a situation where you couldn't drive the car. You could still drive home. Nowadays, with one belt, you lose that one belt, you've lost the alternator. You've lost, in many cases, the water pump. You lost the air conditioning compressor. You lost power steering. You lost every function that is dependent on that belt. So you're not really going to be able to drive the car like you used to be able to. So always inspect the belts and the hoses. Very important to the cooling system. Fan operation. Okay, we've gone over those 3 things. Now, let's talk about the coolant itself. In many cases, the coolant in your car will drop its additives after 2 to 3 years of constant circulation, keeping your car cool. The water pump's pumping that coolant around, and it not only can drop its additives, it can also build up a state of static charge, causing corrupt signals from some of the sensors. It can happen, and the way to avoid that is you drain the coolant after 2 to 3 years, depending on the manufacturer's recommendations, which you can look up online, and depending on what car you have. You need to drain the coolant out of there every couple of years, completely drain it, flush it with either a flush or some clear water, whatever you decide you want to do, but then you add completely new, fresh out of the bottle coolant, and you get it back to a 50-50 mixture so that you can continue with a cooling system that's not going to create hydrolysis and start eating some of the aluminum tubing, some of the water pump impellers, some of the heater core. These are things that can be damaged when you don't change the coolant often enough. Not only that, it can build up, like we said, a static charge called electrolysis, and that can damage the cooling system, the information going to the computer, causing drivability problems.
This is Bob Brooks. You are listening to the Special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. You know, we talk a lot about battery and battery maintenance, but I don't think that, as much as we've talked about it, I don't think that we've ever addressed the question, what are you looking for when you test a battery? Now, to set the question up a little bit with a little bit more detail, you're testing the battery to see if it's going to make it through the summer. I would think that there would be a point, whatever that looks like or reads, when you test your battery, that it's very questionable. Not that it couldn't even go through the summer; it might go straight through the summer without a problem. But you also need to know: is this something I want to roll the dice on? Is this something I want to take a chance if it's already this questionable? What is that for you? Is it number of years? Is it whatever you're reading on that piece of equipment that tests the battery?
Mm-hmm. It's both. If you look at the battery's date and you discover that it is more than 3 years old, this is my opinion only, my general opinion of thumb, if you will, and that is, in my experience, in the years and years I've been working on cars down here in Dallas, in this particular environment that we have here, after about 3 years, you need to have the battery what we call load tested. And what that will tell you is what is the state of that battery's charge and what is the state of that battery's condition. By load testing it, you can determine whether the battery is in a good state or a poor state or a borderline state. Let's say it's testing at kind of borderline rates. Not bad. You don't need to replace it right now, but not really good either. Just kind of, it's dying, but it's not really, at the end of its life yet. Well, those borderline batteries are the one that trick me the most, because batteries do not like to change temperature. They hate it the first cold snap of the year, and they hate it the first heat surge of the summer. They just don't like to, they don't adjust well to big temperature changes. So if you've got a borderline battery and this time of the year, and it's more than 3 years of age, you might not want to roll the dice and just get another battery, because when summer gets here, what happens to a battery is not only does it like to change temperature, but also, like we discussed earlier with adding the heat under the hood, that battery is going to tend to evaporate more water out of the battery, which is going to create more problems because it is working in a hotter environment, so it will accelerate its life expectancy. And then it's just a good way to avoid getting up some morning and your car won't start. It's just 3 years or more on a borderline battery. I would just replace the battery.
Yeah, well, why take the chance? And I was thinking, you're talking about you might get up out of bed and try to go to work and the car won't start. What if you're on vacation? What if you're driving
What if it's an emergency?
Yeah, or driving the kids to 2 or 3 hours down to entertainment place, and
that's why you use the wife's car, Bob.
Right.
She'll just have to Uber to work that day.
As we kind of wrap it up, what are you looking for, with the economy, what it is today, and people trying to conserve money, and especially if you're buying a battery and you're replacing a battery that's working, so you're really kind of spending extra money that you could argue you don't need to yet. What's the minimum qualification or characteristics or whatever you want to call it of the battery that will save you the most money but still yet give you a pretty decent battery?
Cold cranking amps. That is the main issue, the main specification, that you want to look at when you're buying a battery. And don't believe the one that's in your car. You can look it up at the place you're buying a battery and determine what your cold cranking amperage requirement is for your particular vehicle, make, and model. I've seen a lot of times where the battery in the car is not the battery that belongs in the car. You can have a battery in your car that's been working what you consider fine, but it's either too big or too small for the vehicle application, making the alternator work harder, causing overheating in the battery under the hood because it's too big. So there's some issues there when you're buying a battery that you want to be careful of. And maybe next week, when we have a little more time, I'd like to point out how you could get fooled buying a battery and what to watch for.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website, prudentmoney.com, and send it in because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.